In March 2024, Elon Musk takes roughly 1 week to decide where to build the most powerful supercomputer on Earth. He looks at the options. He picks Memphis, Tennessee. And Memphis says yes before anyone in Boxtown hears a word about it. That is the whole story, in 3 sentences. What follows is the detail. It involves 35 gas turbines running without permits in one of the most polluted neighborhoods in the American South, what environmental justice researchers call a sacrifice zone. A glossy mailer telling residents to breathe easy, sent before the emissions controls it described are actually installed. A community benefit fund worth $3.02 million in a city that hosts a company now valued at $230 billion. Memphis did not win the AI race. Memphis became the place where the race was run. Memphis sits at the southern bend of the Mississippi River, where Tennessee meets the Delta. For most of the 20th century, it is one of the most important logistics cities in America. Cotton moves through it, then freight, then FedEx, which builds its global hub here in 1973 and stays. But logistics has never been enough. Memphis is not a city that captures the value of what moves through it. It stores it, sorts it, loads it onto the next truck. The wealth flows downstream. The city stays behind. By 2024, the numbers are stark. Memphis carries a 24% poverty rate, the second highest among all American cities, with populations above 500,000. That year, poverty declines nationally. In Memphis, it goes up. Researchers at the University of Memphis describe the situation plainly. Poverty in Memphis is structural. It is not a bad run of years, it is a condition. 60% of Memphis nonprofits focus specifically on poverty or its consequences. The federal government directs an estimated $1.09 billion annually into Shelby County to manage the problem. None of it bends the curve. 9 miles southwest of downtown, tucked between the Mississippi River and a ring of industrial sites, sits a neighborhood called Boxtown. Boxtown is founded in 1863 by formerly enslaved families, freedmen, who build their own community outside Memphis city limits in the years immediately after the Emancipation Proclamation. For nearly a century, they govern themselves. Then, in the 1960s, the city of Memphis annexes Boxtown. Officials promise city services, fire protection, police, sewer lines, streetlights. Most of those promises are never kept. This pattern has a name. Scholars of environmental justice, including Robert Bullard, often called the father of environmental justice, whose 1990 book Dumping in Dixie first mapped how industrial pollution is systematically directed toward black and low-income communities, call places like Boxtown fence line communities. They sit at the fence line of industrial operations. They absorb the costs. They rarely share the benefits. Decades of redlining and racially exclusionary zoning shaped which neighborhoods ended up next to refineries and which ones did not. Boxtown did not end up here by accident. By the time xAI arrives, Boxtown has few streetlights and virtually no public transit. It sits inside a ring of industrial polluters, a steel mill, a Valero oil refinery, a TVA natural gas plant, multiple chemical facilities. The cancer risk in Boxtown is 4 times the national average. The neighborhood has already fought off one industrial intrusion. In 2019, a crude oil pipeline is routed through Boxtown because internal planning documents describe it as the path of least resistance. Residents protest for 2 years and win. The pipeline is canceled in 2021. 3 years later, Boxtown faces a different kind of arrival. In June 2024, xAI publicly announces its Memphis plans. The site is a former Electrolux appliance factory in the Frank C. Pigeon Industrial Park, in the Boxtown area of southwest Memphis. The factory has been vacant for years. The land is cheap. The regional utility can supply power. Most importantly, the city can move fast. Memphis Mayor Paul Young calls it a transformation. The Greater Memphis Chamber of Commerce calls it the beginning of the digital delta. The promise is up to 500 high-paying permanent jobs with Silicon Valley wages, tax revenue for city services, and a future in artificial intelligence for a city that has spent decades watching its industrial base leave. xAI builds Colossus in 122 days. By September 2024, it is running 100,000 NVIDIA H100 graphics processing units. By December, the number doubles to 200,000. The company calls it the most powerful AI training system in the world. The hardware that trains Grok, xAI's flagship AI model, runs here, in a building that was making refrigerators 18 months ago. For the city government, it is the headline they have been waiting years to write. For Boxtown, it is something else. Colossus requires enormous amounts of electricity. In the months after it opens, xAI needs more power than the local grid can immediately supply. The company solves this problem quietly. It brings in gas turbines, not a few. Dozens of them, trailer-mounted, arrayed across the facility grounds. The Southern Environmental Law Center, working with aerial monitoring group Southwings, flies a drone over the site and counts them. 35 methane gas turbines, operating without air permits, without public notice, and without pollution controls. xAI has told regulators it has 15 turbines. The aerial survey finds more than twice that number. The turbines burn natural gas and release nitrogen oxides, a key driver of smog, as well as formaldehyde. The SELC estimates the facility releases between 1,200 and 2,000 tons of NOx annually. At that level, Colossus is likely the largest single industrial source of smog-forming pollution in Memphis, a city that already receives a failing grade from the American Lung Association for ozone, a city that leads Tennessee in emergency room visits for asthma. Residents in Boxtown begin to notice. They describe a rotten egg smell in the air. They attend public hearings and report worsening symptoms. Barbara Britton, president of the Boxtown Neighborhood Association, says it plainly. We have enough pollutants in our area before they even arrived. This is not an isolated story. Along the Louisiana-Texas Gulf Coast, a stretch of industrial corridor between Baton Rouge and New Orleans known as Cancer Alley has spent decades documenting the same dynamic. Petrochemical plants clustered in predominantly black communities, above-average cancer rates, below-average political power. Researchers who study sacrifice zones, places where environmental harm is concentrated so that production and profit can happen elsewhere, have a term for what Boxtown is experiencing. It is not a side effect. It is a feature of how industrial siting decisions get made when some communities have more leverage than others. xAI's response is a glossy mailer. Delivered to Boxtown residents in April 2025, it tells them the turbines are specially designed to protect the AIR and that each unit carries 3 layers of emissions controls, including a system that reduces pollution to near zero. At a public hearing weeks later, xAI engineers acknowledge the emissions controls have not been installed. They will require retrofitting. The NAACP, represented by the Southern Environmental Law Center, files a formal intent to sue, citing violations of the Clean Air Act, the federal law governing air quality standards, and industrial emissions permitting that has been the primary legal tool in environmental justice litigation for more than 50 years. The Shelby County Health Department ultimately approves a permit for 15 of the turbines. The NAACP appeals. In January 2026, the EPA closes the loophole xAI had exploited to avoid permitting altogether the classification of large industrial turbines as temporary non-road engines. Federal regulators close it specifically because of what happened in Memphis. Memphis is not just the place where the AI race was run. Memphis is the city whose lungs paid to change federal environmental law. The Greater Memphis Chamber of Commerce promises up to 500 high-paying permanent jobs. In January 2026, a review of publicly visible LinkedIn profiles finds 99 people who appear to work at the Memphis facility. More than half are hired from outside the region. xAI's own website in early 2026 lists 44 open Memphis positions spanning security, front desk, and data center operations roles. The numbers do not reconcile. The city collects $13 million in tax revenue from xAI in its first year. Of that, $3.02 million is ring-fenced into a community fund for the neighborhoods within 5 miles of the facility. City officials call it a blessing. At the same moment, xAI carries a private valuation of $230 billion. The community fund represents roughly $1 for every $71,875 of company value. xAI keeps building. Colossus 2 comes online in January 2026, a few miles east of Boxtown. A $659 million third building is filed with Memphis planning authorities. Across the state line in South Haven, Mississippi, xAI announces Macro-HAR-DRR, a $20 billion data center campus described as the largest private economic development investment in Mississippi history. The footprint grows. The poverty rate in Memphis grows with it. In 2019, a pipeline company chose Boxtown because it was the path of least resistance. The community fought back and won. In 2024, an AI company chose Boxtown for reasons that fit the same description. Cheap land, industrial zoning already in place, a city government eager enough to ask few questions, and a neighborhood with no seat at the table when the deal was made. This time, the project was not stopped. It expanded. Memphis is not a warning about what happens when industry leaves a city. It is a warning about what happens when the next industry arrives, and the people who live closest to it are still the last to benefit and the first to pay. They called it the digital delta. In Boxtown, they can smell the turbines from their front yards.